understand, they talk to me.
Hey everyone, welcome to episode 3 of RKO You Didn't Know. I'm Kayvon here with Russell, and this is our third podcast. We're really excited that our podcast is moving forward. We're getting a lot of support, a lot of views, a lot of downloads, a lot of listens rather than downloads for our podcast, and we're really excited to keep going with this. The first thing we want to touch on for episode 3 is SummerSlam that happened 2 nights ago. Today is Tuesday, August 19th, 2014. SummerSlam was 2 nights ago. The big news coming out of SummerSlam, of course, is we have a new WWE World Heavyweight Champion. Brock Lesnar completely dominated John Cena in the main event to win the title, and he is now the champion. And they debuted the new WWE World Heavyweight Championship belt on Monday Night Raw last night from Las Vegas. Russell, what were your thoughts on the championship match between Cena and Lesnar at SummerSlam?
I think it was beast versus man, man versus boy. Brock Lesnar just totally manhandled John Cena. I said in the last podcast that if they were going to push Brock Lesnar as the man, that he had to just destroy John Cena. And with little offense, John Cena looked like a mid-carder compared to Brock Lesnar. The 16 suplexes that he was given was just crazy. It looked like towards the end of the match that Brock Lesnar was just having fun. He did the Undertaker setup. He looked like he was just having fun out there, you know. And John Cena, I have never seen him be as dominated as he was against the Beast.
Never. That was really surprising, I thought, how little offense Cena has had, especially in a big match like this. The commentators also mentioned that they don't ever remember a championship match, the champion being dominated as much in a championship match as we saw in this main event. And I thought what was interesting, too, was that Brock, throughout the match, in like the midst of all those suplexes, when Cena was just laying there, was asking the referee to check on Cena, seeing if Cena wanted to stop, kind of showing mercy on Cena, which I thought was really interesting. And that's where it played in to look like you said, Brock was just having fun with Cena at some point, meaning just throwing him around like a rag doll. It was quite interesting. My question for you, Russell, about that match is, they announced tonight on Main Event that there will be a rematch, Brock versus Cena at Night of Champions, which is on September 21st. I don't expect Cena to get the title back ever. I mean, before WrestleMania, because I expect Lesnar to be champion going into WrestleMania. I mean, do you expect to see a match with a little more offense from John Cena at Night of Champions?
I actually have to question why have a rematch. I know that John Cena, you know, is the former champion. However, you know, Randy Orton never got his rematch.
Exactly.
So, you know, it kind of made me think of why they are putting them two back against each other. It would probably make more sense to have the rematch if John Cena did not look like he was, you know, out of sync, or he was basically just dominated. He was dominated, and for them to give him another rematch, I mean, you know, why? It wasn't a close match. It wasn't an interference. It was a clean win. Brock Lesnar just destroyed him. Other than busting him open and, you know, and bruising him up, he looked like he was totally out of sync. He didn't look like the John Cena that we knew in the first time Brock Lesnar and John Cena went against each other. You know, did Brock Lesnar have more to go for this time, with it being for the strap?
Well, I'll stop you right there, because Paul Heyman made a comment, and he said that the first time John Cena and Brock Lesnar fought at Extreme Rules 2012, Brock Lesnar had just came back from a long absence and was only at 50%. And now, after a couple of years, of course not full time, but just a few big marquee matches over the past 2 years, Brock Lesnar is 100%. He's eaten his fuel and he is ready to go. And I mean, it sure seemed like that. I mean, not only was Cena dominated, I don't think I've ever seen Brock Lesnar in any big main event match or championship match dominate any opponent like he did John Cena. And I can't imagine what the justification would be storyline-wise if Cena was so dominated in this match. How, like you said, how would he be able to mount any offense in his next match? I mean, it's not like John Cena wasn't 100% going into his match at SummerSlam. They didn't even touch each other in the last 4 or whatever weeks going into SummerSlam. So how, if Cena is more offensive in this match at Night of Champions, how would you justify how bad he was at SummerSlam? I mean, we may just be looking at a second match where Cena just gets completely dominated.
And, if they had this in the works, if they thought, okay, we're going to give the rematch at Night of Champions to John Cena, we're going to let Brock Lesnar win at SummerSlam and then have the rematch at Night of Champions. If they knew that going into it, then I think for a storyline purpose, or if you were going to let John Cena be manhandled like he was, then maybe perhaps they should have had something that was maybe taking John Cena off of the ball, that was his head wasn't in the match. I go back to a movie, Rocky III. And in that movie, you had Sylvester Stallone versus Mr. T, right? And Mr. T dominated Rocky in that movie. And they end up having, the fight at the end, and Rocky ends up winning. But in the first match, Rocky was not in it because of his manager dying. So his mind wasn't in it. And I think if they would have went with something like that, where maybe John Cena, his mind wasn't in it, or maybe he wasn't physically ready or something, it would have made more sense that he was dominating the way he was.
Well, that's an interesting. Let me just throw this in there real quick while you're on that train of thought, because what else happened at SummerSlam was that Nikki Bella turned on Brie Bella, and of course, even though they don't really acknowledge it on WWE wrestling programming, everyone knows, if you know anything about behind the scenes stuff or watch Total Divas, that Nikki Bella and John Cena are in a relationship together. And Nikki turned on Brie at SummerSlam. Now, obviously, that's a big moment they wanted to save for SummerSlam. I get that, but if Nikki had turned on Brie prior to Brie's match with Stephanie at SummerSlam, and then John Cena somehow got involved in that whole mix, that could have been an explanation where he was not completely focused on his title match because of the family drama going on with Brie and Nikki, right? Like that could have been a way out. Right.
And they still could play up to that, believe it or not, because, you have the next season Total Divas coming here.
Right.
And, another week or two.
Right.
So they could, take this opportunity to kind of combine those storylines and have a backstage segment, or, find out that the reason John Cena was manhandled the way he was, and these are for the John Cena fans out there. I'm trying to make do that the guy was pretty much whipped. But if they could go back and say, John Cena, he didn't show up for the match, and you know why? Because this was what was going on. And go back and show footage of, maybe them arguing backstage or whatever, and it contemplating to the turn, of sister versus sister. And, we had talked about that in the last podcast, that this would be the perfect opportunity to, one, keep the storyline going and of Daniel Bryan in the back of our mind by having his wife out there defending his honor, and taking that storyline to the next level. However, will they do that? Or, will they try to combine other storylines? Or will they just say that, hey, John Cena had a bad night and he was beat? If they go with the latter and have John Cena just having a bad night, it just doesn't make sense for the rematch at Night of Champions. Brock Lesnar is definitely outmatching John Cena again. I don't see it happening, and this could just be a throwaway pay-per-view until they decide what they're going to do for the next opponent for Brock Lesnar. Because as we have talked, there are so many guys out there right now that are kind of together that, which opportunity do you go with? Do you go with a Randy Orton versus Brock Lesnar after this pay-per-view? Do you bring up Roman Reigns? Is he ready to be in the limelight against Brock Lesnar? There's word that Batista may come back. That would be one I'd like to see. Maybe even a Mark Henry Brock Lesnar match. They did kind of give Mark Henry a little push there last night at the end. So, there's a lot of ways they can go. I just think the rematch of Cena and Brock Lesnar is just kind of something they have to throw together because they really don't know who they're going to throw at Brock Lesnar next. And John Cena, of course, he sells the tickets, and people want to see him get the best of Brock Lesnar in the end.
I can definitely see Batista, considering that the way he left WWE in June, basically telling me, Evolution / The Authority, Triple H that, see ya. And so I think when he comes back, which could be soon, he could be a face, and I could definitely see him taking on Brock Lesnar, considering the fact that now with the popularity of the movie he starred in this summer, Guardians of the Galaxy, I think they might want to showcase Batista when he comes back. Something else I wanted to touch on, Seth Rollins obviously still holding the Money in the Bank briefcase. Considering Brock Lesnar is a heel as of now and Seth Rollins is a heel as of now, I can't really think of any scenario where they would have Seth Rollins cash in on Brock Lesnar for any reason. I think it's more likely that if Roman Reigns wins the title, they would have Seth try and take it from Roman after WrestleMania or whenever that may be. I still am kind of holding on to the idea at some point that maybe Dean Ambrose will challenge Seth Rollins, like you said, for the Money in the Bank briefcase. Those two are having awesome matches. They had an awesome lumberjack match at SummerSlam. They were the main event on Raw last night. Just like an awesome, awesome match. It was a Falls Count Anywhere match. Of course, Dean Ambrose losing both of those matches. But to me, Dean Ambrose is the man, the full-time guy right now. Like, just my favorite to watch. And I could definitely see him challenging Seth Rollins. And then at some point, taking on Brock Lesnar, it kind of seems like a stretch, but, other than Roman Reigns, I can't really think of anybody outside of, if Randy Orton goes face and challenges Brock Lesnar, who it would be. What do you think about Seth Rollins still holding the Money in the Bank briefcase? Do you think he gets it taken away by Ambrose, or do you think he does end up cashing it in at some point?
Well, I think after last night's Raw, there are some questions as far as, will the feud continue with, with Seth Rollins and Dean Ambrose. As it ended, he got the big stomp through the concrete. So is he getting time off? Are they going to go with an injury to kind of slow down that feud and allow him to, allow Seth Rollins to do something else? I think right now this is probably the best position they've been in a long time, where they do have a lot of these guys who are at that top of that glass ceiling, and any one of these guys could be the next big star on the rise. Any of the Shield, really. They not only have proven themselves as a great faction, but they've also shown, and it's hard to see this, but they've also shown that they can survive in singles matches. I mean, they are each doing something on their own without the carryover of the Shield. You've got Seth Rollins, you've got Dean Ambrose proven in great matches, single matches. Of course, Roman Reigns defeating Randy Orton cleanly. That was a big surprise to me that happened, especially as much as Randy Orton has been pushed. And we've talked about this before. Not only has Roman Reigns defeated Randy Orton cleanly, but with the Shield, they beat, Evolution. Triple H has allowed them, to win cleanly against them multiple times. So they really built up these three guys, and I could see any one of them becoming champion later on down the road. Maybe not, as quickly as the next month or two, but, before WrestleMania, I see one of these guys, and I'd be happy with any of them, challenging for the championship, because they have proven that they can not only do it as a faction, but they can do it as singles wrestlers, and they all bring something different to the table, as far as their characters. They're really defining themselves individually, and you don't see that in great factions. The last faction that happened this with was probably Evolution. Breaking out with Triple H, Randy Orton, Batista. These three guys ended up, carrying the belts on multiple occasions, and we may be able to see this happen again with the members of the Shield being individual wrestlers now.
I think it's really smart the way they took, to me, when the Shield was still together. Obviously, Seth Rollins was probably nothing against Seth Rollins. He is amazing in the ring. He was probably, though, the least over of the three in the group when they were together. So by taking him and making him the singles guy and the Money in the Bank briefcase holder first was, to me, the smartest thing they could have done, because they know out of all three of them, he's the one who needed the biggest push to succeed, right, to go forward. And you knew Dean Ambrose, with his whole persona and the way he talks, was going to be just golden going forward. Roman, with his look, next John Cena. But the way they set it up, whether or not Seth Rollins ends up cashing in that Money in the briefcase successfully or not, I think he's in such a great position right now to be one of their top heels going forward. And someone could say, well, I don't really like Seth Rollins, but I say to you, that's the point. The less you like him, the better heel he is. He's a heel right now with really no redeeming qualities. And that's the kind of heel you want, who they could put the belt on, or have him go against a face like Dean Ambrose to really get a face over, because they dislike Seth Rollins so much. They're going to really cheer for Dean Ambrose, which is what they want, So I think that was really, really smart. I want to talk about Rusev defeated Jack Swagger in the flag match at SummerSlam. Jack Swagger never tapped out, but he did pass out, rather, in Rusev's submission move, and reminiscent of the finish for the Bret Hart Stone Cold match at WrestleMania 13, minus the blood dripping down Swagger's face and minus the double turn during the match. But Swagger seemingly, I think, is probably not going to continue his feud with Rusev going forward. It looks like he's on to different things. Tonight on Main Event, he had a run-in backstage with Seth Rollins. Looks like they're going to have a match on SmackDown. And but maybe this is the time where Russell's dreams come true, and Rusev has his match maybe for one of the championships, the Intercontinental title or the U.S. title. Probably preferably the U.S. title, get some heat, more heat on Rusev. Russell, where do you see this whole thing with Rusev, Swagger, those secondary championships going.
Well, I did enjoy the match with Swagger and Rusev. It allowed Swagger, because of the type of match they were having, the flag match, it allowed kind of Swagger to save face because he didn't tap out. He basically, by him passing out, it was put out there that no matter how much pain he was in or, how beaten he was not going to tap out, to Rusev. So I like the ending there. It still made Rusev look strong going into his next feud. Last night on Raw, the one thing I was kind of disappointed is that, Swagger was then defeated again. And then you have Bo Dallas coming out and saying, you basically let 318 million, Americans down, and all you have to do is believe. So I think maybe you might get the Swagger Bo Dallas thing that could be in the works there. It might even be funny if Bo Dallas tries to start helping Jack Swagger believe back in himself, and eventually maybe that's who comes back.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah.
Because now it looks like you have Rusev being challenged by Mark Henry, which when Mark Henry's music hit last night and he came down and, you felt the intensity of Mark Henry because he has represented America in the Olympics twice. He does have the credentials. He's a Texas boy, and the crowd went crazy. And I've said this before, it doesn't matter who Rusev faces because he's the ultimate heel because of, the politics right now.
Being anti-American, right.
Right. So it doesn't matter who he faces. Rusev is going to put that face over just because of what he's representing now. And I think with him bringing down Mark Henry, that is going to set up a match at probably Night of Champions. And if he beats Mark Henry, then maybe they do finally give Rusev the title shot. I know Sheamus came back. He wrestled. He looked like he was injured. I noticed he had a brace on his leg. I don't know if that was a previous injury he's had or something that's been nagging him or anything. But he looked kind of beat up there.
But but let me say this. It was weird for me when Henry came out. Like, I understand the Henry versus Rusev thing, but the past couple of weeks, Henry and Big Show have been teaming up, and they've been undefeated since Big Show came back, and they've been teaming up. They've been going against the Wyatts. And earlier on Raw, Big Show and Mark Henry defeated the Wyatt family. So to me, it was like Mark Henry's got two different things going on right now, which was a little weird considering there are a few guys that they could be doing something with that they're not. So it's kind of weird for me to see Mark Henry in two different storylines right now. I have nothing against Mark Henry at all. I think he's awesome. I've always enjoyed watching him. He's a bigger guy, obviously. And I think, the mindset right now, obviously, is you got Rusev going against your big guys first, right? I mean, he went up against Big E. He had a feud with Big E. Then he went up against Swagger, finished his feud with Swagger. Now Henry. So I can see, him going up against Big Show at some point, considering the tie-in with Mark Henry and Big Show right now. I could definitely, to me, that'll probably be the blow-off for, I don't know, either the end of the year or WrestleMania, Rusev versus Big Show. Or, Rusev at some point getting the U.S. title and then, like Big Show winning it from him or something. But I really think you were right on when you touched on Rusev's got to get that U.S. title. He's got to get it. And what really puzzles me is that, A, Sheamus has had nothing to do with Rusev with that U.S. title in hand, and B, it looks like, as of what happened on Main Event tonight, Cesaro and Sheamus are going to be beginning a feud, and it's just, it doesn't make sense to me. You got two non-Americans fighting for the U.S. title. I mean, they could be fighting for the Intercontinental title. I mean, it really doesn't make sense to me what they're doing with the U.S. title. So I think what they just need to do is either get that on Rusev, that U.S. title, or combine the Intercontinental and U.S. title and forget about the U.S. title, because if you're not going to have it on an American or an American fighting for it, it really doesn't make a whole lot of sense. I mean, explain this to me, Russell, because I'm struggling to understand why Rusev is not in that picture right now.
And I think what it is that they're playing it cool as far as Rusev goes, because they want to build him. They want to build him up and keep him, on the track of being undefeated and facing these guys.
You think it's a slow burn right now for Rusev?
I think that they don't want to rush it. They know they've got money with his character right now. I mean, he gets booed out of the building, especially and with Lana coming out and playing her part. The end of SummerSlam, after he had defeated Jack Swagger's laying there, Zeb Coulter's checking on him, and then she has him kick Zeb Coulter in the face. That was just the icing on the cake there. And if you remember last night on Raw, with Mark Henry coming out, he basically said, "Look, I was sitting in the back listening to you, and I've had enough of hearing this. I just can't stand listening to it anymore, and that's why I came out here. Yeah, I've already had the match tonight, but I'm throwing down with you. I've had enough." So, I mean, like I said, you don't have to have much of a storyline when it comes to, with Mark Henry and or even the Big Show. If Rusev defeats Mark Henry, let's say at Night of Champions, then you throw the Big Show at him, and he beats the Big Show. Now he's beaten two big guys who, are fan favorites, and especially with the military, because they do a lot of stuff with the military. And so, maybe after he defeats Mark Henry and then the Big Show, let's say at the next pay-per-view, then you get Lana saying, is there anyone that can challenge him? And then, or he throws down the challenge to Sheamus, because I don't think Sheamus is really at 100%. He was off for some time because he was still. But I think there's something else there, and I think
I'll tell you what. On main event, he did not look 100% tonight. In fact, I tweeted that he just looked tired. I mean, he looked tired the whole night, and he hasn't been used on every show. So that's interesting.
And that's what I say. If they keep feeding these big mammoth guys to Rusev, and could you imagine Rusev? He's got, I call it the camel clutch. I know they call it something different, but. When I see him do that, I just think of the Iron Sheik.
Yeah.
Yes. And could you imagine him, making Mark Henry tap out, or he gets the Big Show in it, and the Big Show has to tap out? I mean, now you fed him these two giants that he beats cleanly, and of course now he's, if he goes in and he destroys Sheamus and ends up being the U.S. champion. It makes it even more legit if they do that right. I don't think combining the Intercontinental and the U.S. title is going to be something that they're going to do, only because the Intercontinental title now is, of course, on Dolph Ziggler. And I don't think they're going to do something of combining those titles when, the fans finally got what they wanted with Dolph Ziggler. You called that one. We had talked about it on our last podcast about, is Dolph Ziggler ready to handle the belt? And, not only...
I called it, but I was still surprised. I was surprised he actually got over, yeah.
But, can he take that run and go forward? The Miz, like I said, he's not going to be around that long. He's going to go be making another movie. So, who's going to be challenging Dolph Ziggler? You can even have Rusev challenge Dolph Ziggler, but I think if they keep Rusev with the U.S. title, we've talked about that many times, but that's the best way to do it. But you've got, a lot of guys out there that can challenge for the Intercontinental title. And I guess the kayfabe of face versus heel, it's kind of really been going out the window lately, especially, even tag teams. Last night we seen, my tag team of Gold Star, versus the Usos, and they won.
And they won. So they should get a championship match, right?
Right. So, and they were, both faces. Both are definitely fan favorites. So, that's not unheard of anymore of allowing these guys to, it doesn't matter if they're heel or face. But I think if you think of the heels right now in WWE that are true heels, you have the Brock Lesnar, you have Seth Rollins, the Authority kind of is the heels. But other than that, it's kind of muddy waters when it comes to the heel or face because it's so split. And I think that's what's great about WWE right now is even a guy like John Cena, he has his fans and he has people that hate him. So he gets the boos and the cheers. I mean, they were cheering for Brock Lesnar last night more than what I've heard in a long time. And he's supposed to be the heel. So,
yeah,
they've got a lot of potential.
Yeah, definitely. Night of Champions, it could be a throwaway, like you said, but we'll see. It'll be interesting to see what the dynamic is in Cena versus Brock, and what they do with those secondary titles, because every title should be defended at Night of Champions. Hey, to end this podcast, I want to ask you. I want us to both take turns here, just picking. When you think of professional wrestling, and this doesn't just have to be WWE, when you think of professional wrestling, the span of like your scope of professional wrestling, when you think of a great champion or the greatest champion in the history of professional wrestling, just quickly give me who you pick and why.
Okay. Well, I mean, if you look at all the years that professional wrestling has been going on, there are all these different eras. It's kind of hard to pick one. It's kind of like football, of saying who's the greatest quarterback of all time, because the eras are always different. Things have changed. I mean, you're going to have people out there that say, well, Hulk Hogan is the greatest champion there ever was. You're going to have people that were, diehard NWA, WCW fans that are going to say, no, it's Ric Flair. You would have people out there that, may say, hey, Bruno Sammartino, he was the longest reigning champion of all time, and he's what really set up WWE to be what it was today. Of course, you're going to have people go with The Rock and Stone Cold, and some with John Cena. I grew up on Hulk Hogan. He was really what put wrestling on the map, per se. Do I think he was the greatest champion of all time? Probably not. Only because I think, his character got to the point where it wore out, it wore thin, and that's why he had to have the change of character there and go with the NWO.
Something John Cena's hurting for, by the way.
Yeah, and I agree with that. I mean, John Cena's got to the point, he's 10 years. He's said it himself, 10 years. He says it in his promos. When is the heel change? When is the heel going to come out in John Cena? And I don't know why WWE will not pull that trigger and allow him to go heel. It would be the perfect opportunity for him to do so with his, off-screen girlfriend going with the Authority. I mean, they could do that. They could have the back segments with him talking with Nikki Bella, and I cannot believe you did this to your sister. What's going on, or eventually having that where he does join the Authority. And if they really wanted to do it correctly, they could allow Brock Lesnar and Paul Heyman to start running Rampage on the WWE, challenging the Authority, saying, we're the champion, I represent the champion, you're going to do what we say, and start getting under the Authority skin where, have to turn to the John Cena. Kind of like a couple of years ago when Stone Cold, you wouldn't have thought it when he flipped and went to the Authority with Vince McMahon. They teamed up. So I mean, as to answer your question as far as what champion would I think define the WWE, you got to go with Hogan. I mean, it's just Hogan has faced, the likes of Andre the Giant. He faced The Rock, even WCW. He faced a lot of these guys, the Macho Man, and he was the single greatest champion there for a long, long time. In this era, I would say, I still think The Rock is probably one of the best. He's a close second. So, once again, he's fought, Triple H, Undertaker, Hogan, Stone Cold, John Cena. So The Rock has faced all these guys that we talk about as far as champions. Who's the greatest one?
And has beaten them at one point or the other.
Yeah, and has beaten them at one time or the other.
How can The Rock not be called Mr. WrestleMania? I mean, how could he not? I mean, he's beaten Hulk Hogan at WrestleMania. He beat Stone Cold at WrestleMania. He beat John Cena at WrestleMania. I can't think of anybody that transcended generations and with victories like The Rock did. I mean, it's unreal.
Triple H. Mm-hmm.
Triple H, yeah.
But did he beat Brock Lesnar?
Well, no, he didn't. He had his match with Brock Lesnar at SummerSlam 2002. Brock took the title from him, and that was pretty much it for the Rock and Brock feud. Of course, that was supposed to be a match at WrestleMania 30, but because of Rock's injuries after his match with John Cena at WrestleMania 29, never took place. It could take place this year. That's right. It still could. I know The Rock said that he is opening to wrestle for WWE again, so it very well could take place. It's very possible. For me personally, I totally think you nailed it when you said it's like a generational thing, right? Every wrestling fan is going to have a different perception of who is a great champion, and I can definitely understand Hogan. To me, Hulk Hogan is the most popular professional wrestler of all time, hands down. As far as that era of Hogan, though, as far as championships, I would pick Ric Flair. He is a 16-time World Heavyweight Champion, but more than the number of times he's been champion, to me, he brought so much prestige to the title. Not that Hogan didn't, but the fact that he was such a great heel. To me, that's so important. So I would pick Ric Flair championship-wise as far as the late 70s, 80s title picture goes. And as far as the more recent generation, even though Triple H is my favorite wrestler, I would have to pick Edge because Edge was so opportunistic and so cunning every time he won the championship. And to me, he knew how to play, no pun intended, on Triple H, the game, in the sense that he made everything work to his advantage. With the Money in the Bank situations and all his great matches, the quality of matches. And for me, growing up watching as Edge, he's just such an important part of wrestling to me. Just my favorite right behind Triple H. So I would have to go with Ric Flair and Edge. So you went with Hogan and Rock, or is Rock your more modern era guy, champion that you picked?
Yeah, I would say, you were there at WrestleMania 18, right?
Yes, I was. My
when
first
Hogan
one.
And Rock faced off.
I was the only person rooting for Rock in the whole arena because I was 14 years old. Yeah.
And to me, that was a defining moment because you had Hulk Hogan, who had been there, done it all, and you had The Rock, who, generation after generation, wrestling family, was was on the top of his game at the time, and that right there was a definite passing of the torch. Probably the matches in my mind that have made me a wrestling fan was WrestleMania 3 with Hulk Hogan and Andre the Giant, because it was, two icons at the time, and that was a passing of the torch. That match sticks in my mind. Then you have Hogan and The Rock. There's the passing of the torch there. And I think that, you have to see that every 10 years you have to see the next superstar. And
you're talking about milestones. I mean, you're basically talking about your milestones as a fan watching wrestling.
Right. You have to have something that sets the others apart. And that's where the generation gaps come in, is because you're going to have those fans that are going to say, well, I was a fan in the 80s and Hogan was wrestling. He had the cartoons and so forth. He's say your prayers, eat your vitamins, Then you had, later on you had The Rock, and now you have John Cena. And the ultimate thing, and this is why I say The Rock is probably one of the top guys. It's a close with Hogan, is because The Rock has basically been that passing torch between generation and generation. He fought Hogan. The torch was passed from Hogan to The Rock. The Rock then passed the torch to John Cena, at their WrestleMania. So that's why I say John Cena, is got to be doing that later on. And maybe this is the John Cena rub to Brock Lesnar, that we're seeing now. You always got to have that next generation superstar that's going to come up and take the reins, Roman Reigns. And I think that's what you're going to see here at the next WrestleMania. You're going to see that Roman Reigns will eventually get the rub from Brock Lesnar, just like Brock Lesnar got the rub from The Rock.
I totally agree with what you're saying. For me, I think of like the reason I don't mention, I guess, Rock and Austin in like a championship sense is because their importance to me is for different reasons, in the sense of when I think of rivalries, like my first rivalry I really felt as a young fan. But of course, there's a little bit of age difference between you and me, so it's going to be a little bit different perception. But for me, and I know everyone talks about how McMahon-Austin was the greatest feud, and it's amazing. I mean, but to me, it's Rock and Austin, because Rock and Austin had the intensity McMahon and Austin did, and McMahon was a part of Rock and Austin feud, but Rock and Austin had the intensity, but they had the matches that I can't tell you how many times I would watch their WrestleMania matches over and over and over again. And it just, to me, that made me get into wrestling so much. But when I think of the way guys won championships and just overall their championship reigns as a whole, that's why I think of like Edge, in more of a championship sense. To me, Rock and Austin, it was about the title, but it's almost as if they didn't need the title. They had something so deep that just made that rivalry. You know what I mean?
And what made it even better with Rock and Austin was each time they fought each other, it wasn't the same heel versus face.
Right.
Each time they fought, one was, I think the first time they fought, Austin was the face, Rock was the heel.
Right.
I think the second time they fought, Austin was the heel, Rock was the face. And then
they had to turn in the match, right? I mean, because McMahon came out, it was WrestleMania 17, and Austin let McMahon help him, and Austin probably whether or not it was a good idea at the time, probably the biggest turn in pro wrestling history outside of Hulk Hogan joining the NWO.
Correct.
Yeah.
The crazy thing about it is that if you look at some of the potentials of the guys that have came in and out of the WWE, and this gets to the point of Sting. But you look at the guys that they brought in at one time, the Brock Lesnar, Goldberg, Stone Cold Steve Austin, all in the same ring at the same time. It was unfortunate that Brock Lesnar, was leaving and Goldberg was leaving. You didn't see, what could have been on that with both guys leaving, the WWE at that time. And I think some of these guys that they've brought in that, their matches could have, I would have loved to see, a Stone Cold Goldberg.
Mm-hmm.
Or I would love to see a Stone Cold versus Brock. But for whatever reason, we never did.
Well, we almost got Stone Cold versus Brock, but that's the night he walked out of Raw because he didn't like the booking in 2002 and was gone for a year. So it almost happened. But there's so many possibilities. I mean, yeah.
Yeah, and that's one thing. You'll never know at the time when these champions like the Hulk Hogan came back.
Sure.
The one thing that did matter is that it seemed like always that The Rock was the one that was willing to make the big match. He was the foundation of WWE when it comes to taking the generation that I knew, the Hulk Hogan generation, and being the middleman to take that wrestling opportunity and passing it on to John Cena. I mean, if you look at matches of all-time matches, and you look at a Hulk Hogan, you look at a Rock, you look at Stone Cold, and you want to, make the match of all time, Stone Cold, even though he was really big, he never fought Hogan. He never fought Goldberg. He never fought Brock Lesnar. I don't think we got a Rock Goldberg, did we?
It was Goldberg's first feud when he came to WWE in 2004.
That's right. So that's what I'm saying. If you look at it, Rock has fought Goldberg. He's fought Brock. He's fought Hogan.
That just adds to the Rock's list of names that we were talking. I mean, probably as far as superstars go, Rock has probably spanned more superstars as far as feuds go than anybody really. As far as like I said, generation-wise, because I forgot about Goldberg till you mentioned it. But he was like the top guy from WCW, and Rock faced them along with all the top guys of every generation from WWE. While he was around.
And I think that's why you look at Hogan. Hogan he was an era guy. He was the 80s, and then of course he goes to WCW. The thing with Hogan, and I blame this mainly on WWE at the time, and maybe because they had WCW, they didn't have the opportunities. But it was like what soured me on Hogan was that he always came out on top, and he never really had the talent to go against like they do now, or like they did with Brock, Stone Cold. It was always, Hogan was going to come out on top no matter who it was.
But isn't that John Cena? I mean, to me, you're describing John Cena also.
And that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm hoping that they start getting out of that mold where they don't, fall prey to what they did with Hulk Hogan. Because, it was like, I think WWE really wanted to see someone take over for Hogan, years and years ago. But they couldn't find the superstar to sell the merchandise, to, sell out the arenas. They couldn't find it. They had to always rely on Hogan. There was many times that Hogan would lose Ultimate Warrior, Randy Savage, and these guys just either didn't have the build-up like Hogan did, or for whatever reason, Hogan always had to get the belt back. Yeah. And I think the last couple months, we kind of seen the same thing with John Cena getting the belt back again. All last year when CM Punk was in, how many times did CM Punk have to beat John Cena?
Mm-hmm.
And I hope that's not the same thing they're going to do with Brock Lesnar. How many times is Brock Lesnar going to have to beat John Cena because they don't have that next superstar to challenge Brock Lesnar? because they're putting all their eggs in the John Cena basket because he is the face of the company. Let's not kid ourselves. He's the guy that sells the merchandise. He's the guy that everybody comes to see. They want to see John Cena.
Absolutely.
The kids love him, and that can hurt the company because it doesn't allow these other guys to get the opportunity. The one thing I will take away with Brock Lesnar said in the interview before SummerSlam was, if I wouldn't have left WWE when I did, there would not have been a John Cena.
Yeah.
You remember that in the interview?
Absolutely.
And I think that's true. If Brock Lesnar would have stayed around, John Cena probably wouldn't be where he's at, because Brock Lesnar, years ago, before John Cena became what he is now, was very dominant. He dominated The Undertaker. That's when he was Dead Man Incorporated.
And he chose to leave. And he chose to leave when he had so much he could have done still.
Right.
Yeah.
But, you can't blame the guy. He wanted to go on and, he tried football. I think he played for the Minnesota Vikings.
And he hated traveling. He hated the schedule, too.
Right.
So
this opportunity that they're giving Brock Lesnar now, if they go with this short schedule, or they, or however they do it, maybe it might work better for him.
Yeah.
But going back to what we originally talked about when we first started talking, for him to beat John Cena like he did at SummerSlam, they have to either have something in the works, with one of these young superstars, because it just doesn't make sense to have John Cena continue the rivalry against Brock Lesnar, especially when he was dominated like he was. Hopefully they have it figured out here before WrestleMania, or even before Survivor Series. I also think that they have to build these guys up like the Roman Reigns. I don't think Roman Reigns is ready to face Brock Lesnar. Give him a couple more months, a couple more wins. The Randy Orton win was great for his career. But they've got so many guys that they could, put the belt on here if Brock Lesnar decides he, doesn't want to stay as long as past WrestleMania. If The Rock comes back or Batista comes back, those are matches that people are going to want to see.
Yeah.
Hey,
maybe Rock versus Batista, movie star versus movie star.
Yeah. The storylines are going to have to dictate what they're going to do with Brock Lesnar. Is he a company man now, or is he only going to stay a couple months? He got the championship. That's what he wanted to do, and he's done. You never know, especially with Rock saying he wants to come back in, because that was what they had originally planned last year. If they do a Rock versus Brock, I don't want it to be for the title. I because they're unless they're going to stay around.
Which neither of them would. I mean, I'll be surprised if Brock is around till WrestleMania with that title, or even without the title.
How many months do you think Brock Lesnar will hold on to the title?
I think he's got it till WrestleMania. But that being said, I don't think he's at every Raw. I doubt you'll maybe ever even see him on SmackDown. He's certainly not working house shows. So I think he holds on to it till WrestleMania and appearing at every other Raw.
Could be. Time will tell.
I think that's the smartest thing. You build up the beast, and then Roman, Superman punch and spear. I think Roman's right on the cusp. He is the next man. I truly believe that Roman will take the belt from Brock at WrestleMania. And I'll keep saying it every podcast till it happens.
What do you think Roman Reigns has to do to get up to? Do you think Roman Reigns is ready to face Brock Lesnar?
No. You were right. He needs more time. You're absolutely right. But he needs to do the same thing Brock Lesnar's doing. They need to run parallel paths to WrestleMania. Brock needs to be destroying big names, big faces. Roman needs to be destroying big heels. They both need to be well, Brock's going to go undefeated, but Roman needs to be certainly mostly undefeated heading into WrestleMania, where there's a chance once he gets to WrestleMania, well, he's not been completely undefeated, but he's got a pretty good chance of beating Brock, and more than anyone else. And I think they just run parallel to WrestleMania, Roman running through the heels, Brock running through the faces, and then at WrestleMania, it's the brawl to end all, and they let Roman have his moment, and then you're set with Roman.
Do you see Roman Reigns facing John Cena before WrestleMania?
Yeah. I can see that. I can certainly see them having a feud for the title after Roman's champion, but I could see that because I don't know who else John Cena's going to have a feud with. I mean, he's already had a feud with Bray Wyatt. I mean, he's not going to go for the secondary titles. I mean, you know what? Speaking of that, maybe if you really, really want to bump up Rusev, I think you just nailed it right there. Who's more? I mean, besides Swagger, who's Mr. America in WWE? I mean, come on. I mean, Cena. If you have Rusev take out Cena, think about what that would do for Rusev. You know. So I think that's an option there too. But I could definitely see Roman and Cena certainly at some point. I mean, it's possible before WrestleMania. Most likely at some point in the next year, I would say, though.
Well, you have a couple major pay-per-views coming up. I think if they do a, what we may see here in the next pay-per-views, until they feel like Roman Reigns is ready to, take the torch and run with it. I think you may see John Cena versus Brock Lesnar, Night of Champions, which we've already heard that's going to happen. Then you have the next pay-per-view, which is Hell in a Cell.
Yes.
That may, have Brock Lesnar versus John Cena again, and that may be the one that ends their feud.
I think so. Yeah, I think they have a Hell in a Cell match. I think so.
And that's what usually ends the feuds.
Right.
And then
should, at least.
By that time, what do you have after Hell in a Cell?
Survivor Series.
That would be the perfect opportunity for The Rock to come back, maybe challenge Brock Lesnar at that time, or you may even get, maybe Batista comes back in that time frame. You might get a Batista versus Brock Lesnar at Survivor Series. I think if The Rock comes back, he comes back at Royal Rumble as one of the entries, and that may be how you get a Rock Brock at WrestleMania.
But you don't mean for Rock to win the Royal Rumble, do you? Because I think Roman's going to win the Rumble, and that's how he's going to get his championship match.
Yeah, it could be.
Because he almost won it last year.
Yeah, and they could go that way too, but they got to keep Brock Lesnar strong. If they're going to keep the title on Brock Lesnar up to WrestleMania, then they're going to have to feed him, John Cena, Batista, they're going to have to keep feeding them these major guys, and maybe have the Roman Reigns facing John Cena before WrestleMania.
Right. Well, that would certainly add to his momentum going into WrestleMania if he can get over Cena in a feud prior to WrestleMania. Or, maybe Rusev's the guy who takes out, Roman's the guy who takes out Rusev, and then that adds to his momentum, Roman's finally, if Roman can beat Rusev, he can take out Brock, right? That's the idea. Maybe that's, I don't know. That might be the way to go.
Last question.
Yeah.
Your top 5 superstars right now. Who do you think is the top 5
full-time wrestlers?
No, just top 5 superstars. Who are when you watch wrestling right now, who are your top 5 wrestlers? Doesn't have to be men, it could be the Divas. What is your top 5 list of what you like to see right now?
Right now, I would say out of the people, of course, we all have our all-time favorites, but of right now, of the people who I think are the best in the realm of business and professional wrestling, number one, I would have to say Roman Reigns, just in the sense that he is. I know he's going to be the next big guy, and so I think he's their moneymaker in their pocket. Number two, Dean Ambrose, because Dean Ambrose to me is having just. He's got it. I mean, he's like Roddy Piper and Stone Cold. Number three, I would have to say Brie Bella, because Brie has so much support behind her. The Daniel Bryan fan supporter. They love that she's going up against a great heel like Stephanie, and now her sister Nikki. Number four, I would have to say. Number four, I would have to say Seth Rollins. I think he's the best. Let me take that back. I would say number four, Brock Lesnar, because Brock Lesnar is their best heel without a doubt right now. He's the most believable heel that they have. Number five would have to be Seth Rollins, because I think he's right behind him as far as heels go. So Roman, Dean, Brie, Brock, and Seth. Those are my top five.
Those are what you look forward to on wrestling.
Yes.
My picks would be, I look forward to Paul Heyman and Brock Lesnar. That's my number one thing. My second is Rusev and Lana. My third is Bray Wyatt. My fourth is The Authority. And my fifth would probably have to be Gold Star.
Oh yeah, you love Gold Star.
I love Gold Star. I think that I think they've hit on something there, and the crowd enjoys it. And if you look at the backstage segments, those five that I mentioned, they have a lot of TV time. A lot of TV time. And the three guys that were the Shield, Seth Rollins, Dean Ambrose, Roman Reigns, they're at a close fifth.
Yeah.
But I think they've got so much potential right now with the roster.
Absolutely.
It is hard to see where they're going to go with. I just hope that for all the WWE listeners out there, that they just continue not to feed us Brock Lesnar, John Cena, pay-per-view after pay-per-view.
I think we're at least getting it through Hell in a Cell. That's my opinion. That's my prediction. Two more pay-per-view matches, Cena and Brock. Two more. And then after that,
could change.
I could. Yeah, I could.
That could definitely change if.
But we're at least getting one more. Yeah.
Yeah, Night of Champions.
Yeah.
So your predicaments at Night of Champions. Every belt usually is defended.
Yes.
So we know we have a Brock Lesnar versus John Cena match. You have already said that Brock Lesnar will win that. I agree with you there.
Yes.
So Intercontinental. Who do you think?
Ziggler and Miz again. Dolph retains.
Okay. I agree with you on that one.
U.S. title. I just have to say Sheamus and Cesaro because, like I said, I watched Main Event tonight, and it looks like they're starting up something with Cesaro and Sheamus as much as it really doesn't make sense to me. And I think I could see, with something going on with Sheamus, I think I could see Cesaro winning the U.S. title if that's the match at Night of Champions.
And what about tag team?
Tag titles, look, I'm ready to see Gold Star champs.
Is it written in the stars?
I think the cosmic key is written in the stars, and it's time for them to be tag team champions.
And then your Diva match.
Divas match, I just read today that there's some rumors going around that AJ may be leaving WWE. I hope that's not true, But I think Paige is amazing. But I would like to see AJ get her title back from Paige at Night of Champions.
Well, it's going to be a great pay-per-view. And for all you fans out there, get the WWE Network for only
$9.99. I think I'm going to start a Facebook page for all our fans to look at. We can post stuff on there and post questions and comments about our podcast. We can embed the podcast, post it right on the page. So look forward to that in the future. Once again, thank you for all your support, everyone. We're going to continue doing this. We'll be back with episode 4 in 2 weeks from now. And Russell, any final comments?
Just look forward to what's coming up in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, everyone. And for Russell, this is Kayvon signing off and saying take care, and we'll see you on the next podcast.